The man who vanished between floors. The elevator doors closed at 10:14 on a Thursday night. 6 people were inside. 43 seconds later, the same doors opened in the lobby. Only 5 people came out. The missing passenger was Nolan Price, Chief Financial Officer of Halcyon Dynamics, one of the largest logistics companies in Grayford. The elevator had not stopped. The doors had not opened. The ceiling hatch remained locked from the inside. There was nowhere inside the steel cabin for a grown man to hide. The security camera showed Nolan entering on the 28th floor. It never showed him leaving. For 7 seconds during the descent, the lights went out and the footage turned black. When the picture returned, Nolan Price was gone. The next morning, his body was found in his office. According to the medical examiner, he had died at least half an hour before the camera recorded him entering the elevator. That was when Maya Keller came to see me. Rain followed her through my office door. It had been falling over Grayford since dawn, flattening newspapers against the pavement and turning the city windows into sheets of gray glass. Maya stood just inside the doorway, with a closed umbrella in one hand and a leather folder pressed against her chest. Her dark hair was damp. There were shadows beneath her eyes. She looked like someone who had spent the night answering questions she did not understand. "You're Walter Hayes?" "That depends who's asking." "My name is Maya Keller. I'm senior legal counsel at Halcyon Dynamics." I pointed toward the chair opposite my desk. She sat carefully and placed the folder across her knees. Both hands remained over it. People sometimes hold objects that way when they are afraid everything around them will collapse if they let go. I watched her for a moment. "You were in the elevator." Her eyes narrowed. "You've seen the news." "I've seen enough to know the news hasn't seen much." Maya looked toward the rain moving down the window. "There were 6 of us when the doors closed, and 5 when they opened." "Yes." "You saw Nolan Price enter?" I stood beside him. "You spoke to him?" "I did." "What did he say?" For the first time, she hesitated. I asked whether he had read the report I sent him. "What report?" "An internal compliance review. Payments to several outside contractors didn't make sense. I had been trying to speak to Nolan all evening." "And when you finally did?" "He told me we would discuss it downstairs." "That was all?" "Yes." "Did he look at you?" "Not directly." "Was that unusual?" A tired expression crossed her face. Everything about Nolan was unusual when he wanted to avoid a conversation. She pushed the folder across the desk. Inside were still images from the elevator camera. The first showed 6 people in a polished steel cabin. Maya stood near the control panel. Beside her was Lydia Marsh, Halcyon's head accountant. Near the rear wall stood Marcus Bell, the building security supervisor, and Caleb Dunn, a young financial analyst. Thomas Reed, a night custodian, held a bucket and a mop. The final passenger stood in the far corner. Dark overcoat, gray scarf, thin black glasses, head lowered. Nolan Price. The second image had been captured after the blackout. Maya, Lydia, Marcus, Caleb, and Thomas were still there. The corner where Nolan had stood was empty. "You watched him disappear?" I asked. Maya shook her head. "No. The lights went out. Someone swore. I heard movement behind me. Then the lights came back." "How long?" 7 seconds, maybe 8. "And you noticed immediately that Nolan was gone?" Not until the doors opened. You didn't count? Her answer came with a trace of irritation. It was crowded. Everyone was tired. We were trying to understand why the elevator had lost power. Did the doors open during the blackout? No. You're certain? I was standing beside them. I studied the photographs again. The elevator was not large. 6 people would have made it feel smaller. There was no trapdoor in the floor, no visible opening in the walls. The ceiling hatch had been inspected and found locked. You said the medical examiner believes Nolan was already dead. Maya nodded. His assistant found him at 7:30 this morning. He was lying behind his desk. Cause of death? A heavy blow to the back of the head. Estimated time? Between 9:15 and 9:45 last night. The elevator footage had been recorded at 10:14. At least half an hour before you saw him. Maya tightened her fingers around the folder. I know how it sounds. How does it sound to you? She lifted her eyes. Like I spoke to a dead man. People came to my office with all kinds of stories. Some believed their homes were haunted. Some believed strangers were following them. Some believed the dead had returned because they had unfinished business. Usually, the truth was simpler. It was rarely kinder. Why come to me? I asked. The police think the 5 of us planned it. Did you? No. Then they'll need evidence. They already have evidence. Every one of us had a reason to hate Nolan. That includes you? Maya looked down. My report could have ended his career. It might have sent him to prison. What was in it? $4,800,000 paid to companies that barely existed. And Nolan authorized the payments? Most of them. Did he steal the money? I didn't know yet. But someone did not want you to find out. That's what I'm afraid of. I opened the folder again. Tell me about the people in the elevator. Maya took a slow breath. Lydia Marsh worked with Nolan for 12 years. 2 weeks ago, he removed her access to several accounts. Reason? He never gave one. Marcus Bell? Nolan planned to replace the building's security contractor. Marcus would have lost his job. Caleb Dunn? Caleb reported directly to Nolan. He was blamed for an accounting error that cost Halcyon nearly $200,000. Thomas Reed? His wife lost her health coverage when Halcyon closed one of its warehouses. And you. My investigation. Was anyone else on the 28th floor that night? Nolan's younger brother Evan visited earlier, but he left before 9. What does Evan do? He owns shares in Halcyon. He used to work there, but Nolan forced him out 3 years ago. Why? Gambling debts, missing company money, family problems. Do the brothers look alike? Something changed in her expression. Somewhat. How much is somewhat? Enough for people to mention it, not enough to confuse them in daylight. I looked at the dark, grainy image. Elevators don't offer much daylight. Maya stared at the photograph. You think the man in the elevator was Evan? I think Nolan Price did not walk into that elevator after someone crushed the back of his skull. The Halcyon building stood near the financial district, 31 floors of dark glass above a wide concrete plaza. By the time I arrived, the rain had thinned to a cold mist. News vans lined the street. Reporters waited beside the revolving doors, hoping grief might come outside and give them a statement. Maya led me through an underground entrance, Marcus Bell met us in the security office. He was a large man with a shaved head, a dark suit, and the exhausted expression of someone whose equipment had become more famous than he had. "I've already answered police questions for 6 hours. I'll try not to make mine sound the same. They all sound the same. Then perhaps the answers are the problem." He did not appreciate that. Marcus turned toward a wall of monitors. One screen showed the inside of the express elevator. "You checked the footage yourself?" I asked. 3 times. "Any editing?" "No." "Missing frames?" 7 seconds during the power failure. Only the elevator camera failed. The lights and camera share a backup circuit. Someone triggered a reset. Who could do that? Me. 2 technicians. Building management. Could Lydia Marsh? No. Could she use your access? Marcus's jaw tightened. My credentials are protected. That wasn't my question. He looked at Maya, then back at me. No one can use them without my phone or security card. Did either leave your possession yesterday? Marcus hesitated. Lydia borrowed my phone in the afternoon. Why? She said hers was dead and she needed to call the parking office. How long did she have it? A minute. That's enough time to make a call, he said. Nothing more. People have changed governments in less time. Marcus opened the system log. At 10:14 and 31 seconds, the elevator circuit reset. It returned 7 seconds later. What caused it? A maintenance command. From where? This office. You were inside the elevator? Yes. So who was using the terminal? No one. Is there a camera here? Yes. And what does it show? The security office camera lost connection at the same time. That's convenient. Marcus turned sharply. You think I arranged it? Did you? No. He brought up the elevator travel record. The express car had left the 28th floor at 10:14 and arrived in the lobby 43 seconds later. How long does the trip usually take? I asked. About 38 seconds. This one took 5 seconds longer. Speed variation. Show me how often. Marcus searched the records. Most trips lasted 37 or 38 seconds. A few took 39. None took 43. Play the footage again. The doors opened on the 28th floor. Caleb entered first, then Lydia. Thomas followed with his cleaning supplies. Maya stepped inside. Marcus held the doors. Just before they closed, a man in a dark coat moved through the narrowing gap. Gray scarf, black glasses, Nolan Price. He never raised his face toward the camera. He took the rear corner and remained there. Maya turned and spoke to him. The footage had no sound, but his head moved as he replied. 14 seconds later, the screen went black. When the image returned, the rear corner was empty. The 5 remaining passengers looked toward the ceiling lights. Thomas turned around first. Marcus stared at the panel. Maya faced the doors. No one seemed to notice the empty corner. The elevator reached the lobby. 5 people stepped out. Play the entrance again, slower. The final figure moved through the doors. Something bothered me. Not the face, the hands. He carried a thin folder in his left hand. Was Nolan left-handed? I asked. Maya shook her head. No, he injured his left hand years ago. 2 fingers never fully recovered. On the screen, the man adjusted his glasses with his left hand. Not carefully. Naturally. What about Evan? I don't know. Marcus stared between us. What are you suggesting? I pointed toward the frozen image. Your missing man may never have been inside that elevator. You can see him. I can see a coat, a scarf, and a pair of glasses. That is Nolan Price. That is what someone wanted you to think. Marcus took us to the elevator. Inside, the steel walls reflected our faces in dull, stretched shapes. I stepped into the corner where the man had disappeared. A narrow, decorative seam ran from floor to ceiling. Near the bottom, the steel was scratched. The marks were fresh, as though something had been pulled away and pushed back. What's on the other side of this wall? I asked. The service elevator shaft. You said there were no other doors. There aren't. Not passenger doors. A maintenance technician removed 4 screws. The panel came away. Behind it was a smaller metal hatch, not large enough to walk through upright, large enough for a man to crawl through. Marcus went pale. What is that? The technician crouched beside it. Old transfer hatch. The express and service cars can be aligned during emergency evacuation. The hatch could only be opened when the service elevator was positioned at exactly the same height. We returned to the security office. Where was the service elevator at 10:14? I asked. Marcus checked the log. At the loading level. That's the normal record. Look for maintenance commands. He searched again. The service elevator had received a manual positioning order at 10:13. It moved empty to a point between the 21st and 22nd floors. It stayed there for 11 seconds, then returned to the loading level. The express car showed no official stop, but its travel time told a different story. 5 missing seconds. Enough for the cars to slow. Enough for the hidden hatches to meet. Enough for a prepared man to move from one elevator into the other. Maya stared at the open panel. Nolan didn't vanish. No, he changed elevators. The loading dock camera showed the service car arriving less than 2 minutes later. No one walked through the main doors. But a second camera near the emergency stairwell caught a man in a maintenance jacket and baseball cap leaving at 10:17. His face was turned away. His left arm swung freely. He had entered the express elevator as Nolan Price. He left the building as someone else. Finding Evan Price took less than an hour. He was staying at a hotel near Grayford Central Station under the name Edward Pierce. I found him alone in the hotel bar. He was shorter than Nolan by perhaps an inch. The same jaw, the same dark hair. The resemblance would not have fooled anyone across a dinner table. But beneath an elevator camera, behind glasses and a scarf, it was enough. When he saw me approaching, he reached for his drink. Evan Price? He looked toward the exit. No. That works better when you don't react to the name. I sat across from him. You carried the folder in the wrong hand. His face tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Nolan could barely use his left hand. You can. He stood. I'm leaving. My eyes moved toward the fresh scratches on his wrist. You're also bleeding. He pulled his sleeve lower. One of the screws inside the transfer hatch carried a faint smear of blood. You can speak to me, I said, or you can explain it to the police after they match that blood. He remained standing for several seconds, then sat down again. A quiet song played above the bar. Evan stared into his drink. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I didn't kill him." "Who did?" "I don't know." That answer won't survive 5 minutes. "I swear." "You dressed as your dead brother, entered an elevator in front of 5 witnesses, disappeared through a hidden hatch, and left through a service stairwell." His fingers tightened around the glass. "That makes you many things. Innocent isn't the first one that comes to mind." He closed his eyes. "She said Nolan was alive." "Who?" "She told me he had left town. She said he needed an alibi." "Who told you?" Evan looked at me. "Lydia Marsh." Lydia had called him at 9:50. She said Nolan had discovered that both of them were connected to unauthorized payments. According to her, Nolan planned to disappear with the remaining money and leave Evan and Lydia to take the blame. She told Evan that Nolan needed witnesses to believe he had left the office after 10. All Evan had to do was wear his brother's clothes, enter the elevator, and follow instructions. Why would Nolan need you to impersonate him if he was alive? Lydia said there were cameras outside. She said Nolan couldn't risk being seen leaving through the main entrance. And you believed her? I believed she had documents that could put me in prison. 3 years earlier, Evan had approved company payments to a business owned by one of his gambling creditors. He had intended to replace the money. He never did. Nolan discovered the theft and forced him out of Halcyon without calling the police. Lydia kept copies of everything. She said if I didn't help, she would send the files to the district attorney. So you went to the building? Yes. Where did you meet her? In the parking garage. Did she have Nolan's clothes? The coat was in her car, so were the glasses and scarf. Did you see your brother? No. Did you ask to? She said he was already gone. What was in the folder? Blank paper. What were you told to say in the elevator? Evan swallowed. Only one sentence. He repeated it exactly as Maya had heard it. We'll discuss it downstairs. She told you to say nothing else? Yes. Keep my face down. Wait for the lights. Count to 2. Open the panel. Who controlled the elevators? I don't know. She said everything was programmed. What did you do with the clothes? I left them in a bag near the loading dock. Police found the bag. Inside were Nolan's coat, scarf, and glasses, along with a maintenance jacket, a baseball cap, and thin gloves. Evan's blood was on the inside edge of the scarf. The impossible disappearance was no longer impossible, but the murder was still waiting upstairs. Lydia Marsh agreed to speak with me in a conference room on the 26th floor. She was in her early 40s and precise in every movement. Her hair was tied back. Her dark jacket had no wrinkles. A cup of coffee sat untouched in front of her. I've already told the police everything. Did you tell them about Evan? Something shifted behind her eyes. Evan wasn't in the elevator. He was wearing Nolan's coat. That's absurd. He confessed. She looked toward Maya, who stood near the door. I was told this would be private, Maya answered quietly. You were told wrong. Lydia folded her hands. Evan has spent years blaming other people for his failures. If he says I forced him to do something, he's lying. He knew about the transfer hatch. The story has been on the news. The hatch hasn't. For the first time, She had no immediate answer. Perhaps Marcus told him. Marcus didn't know it existed. Then Evan found it himself. He also knew exactly when the lights would fail. Lydia leaned back. Am I under arrest? Not yet. Then I'm leaving. She pushed her chair back. I placed Maya's report on the table. Nolan discovered the payments. Lydia stopped. $4,800,000. 12 shell companies, most approved through your department. Nolan authorized them, using codes generated from your office. Because I managed the accounts. You also created the vendors. That was part of my job. One company was registered to an empty warehouse, another to a mailbox in Delaware. 3 used the same bank contact. Lydia turned toward Maya. You had no right to give him that report. Nolan is dead, Maya said. Company policy is no longer my greatest concern. Lydia stood. What happened at 9:30? I asked. I was working. Where? My office. Alone? Yes. No camera inside. I value privacy. So did Nolan. She moved toward the door. You called Evan at 9:50. She stopped. Phone records. You used an internet calling service, but the hotel network logged the connection. That proves I called him. Nothing more. You told him Nolan had left town. That's his claim. You gave him Nolan's clothes. His claim. You copied Marcus Bell's credentials. This time she did not answer. When you borrowed his phone, you were not calling the parking office. You opened the building security application and generated a recovery code. Marcus had found the notification in an archived folder. The same code had later accessed the elevator controls remotely. Lydia returned to the table. You're building a story. That's what you did. You have nothing that places me in Nolan's office. I have the call to Evan, the copied credential, the elevator commands, and the missing money. Circumstantial. Yes. A faint smile appeared. Then speak to me again when you have something real. Why did Nolan remove your account access 2 weeks ago? He was restructuring the department. He was investigating you. No. He asked Maya to review the contractor payments. That proves nothing. He also arranged a meeting with federal investigators for Friday morning. The color left her face. Only a little, but enough. There was no meeting. You didn't know about it. You're lying. Why would you think that? Nolan would never have gone to federal investigators. Why not? Her voice sharpened. He would have handled it internally. The room became still. Maya looked at me. Lydia realized what she had said. You knew Nolan had discovered the theft. You simply did not know how far he had gone. That proves nothing. It proves you knew more than you told the police. She left. Maya waited until the footsteps disappeared. There wasn't a federal meeting. No. You invented it. Yes. She nearly admitted everything. Nearly doesn't put anyone in prison. What will? The right object. Nolan's office had been released after the first forensic examination. It was large, quiet, and too clean. Gray carpet, glass desk, shelves filled with awards nobody wanted until someone decided they should look expensive. The body had been found behind the desk. According to the medical examiner, Nolan had been struck once with a heavy, smooth object. No murder weapon had been found. On the desk were 2 monitors, a metal lamp, and several framed photographs. One showed Nolan and Evan as younger men on a sailboat. Nolan's left hand was covered by a white bandage. Another showed Halcyon senior executives at an award ceremony. Lydia stood beside Nolan, holding a clear glass trophy. "What was the award?" I asked. "Regional Financial Leadership," Maya said. I looked toward the shelves. There were several trophies. None matched the photograph. "Where is it?" "Maybe Nolan took it home." "Did he take much home?" Maya shook her head. "His wife says he barely took himself home." Building maintenance records showed that a cleaner had emptied a broken glass container at 6 that morning. Police searched the waste compactor. They found fragments of thick engraved glass wrapped in paper towels. The metal base remained intact. Someone had wiped it. They had not wiped inside the narrow groove between the glass and the base. Nolan's blood was there. So was a partial fingerprint belonging to Lydia Marsh. A fingerprint alone was not enough. She had held the trophy before. Then Caleb Dunn changed everything. The young analyst had been the quietest passenger in the elevator. When I questioned him again, his hands began to shake. Before I asked anything, he spoke. "I didn't see anyone kill Nolan. I didn't ask if you did." Caleb stared at the floor. "You were going to. What did you see?" At 9:40, Lydia came out of Nolan's office. "You're certain?" "Yes." "Why didn't you tell the police?" "She saw me." "What happened?" "She said Nolan was angry and didn't want to be disturbed." "And you believed her?" "At first." "What changed?" "She had something wrapped inside her jacket. It looked heavy." "The trophy?" "I couldn't see it." "What did she do?" "She went toward the restroom. A few minutes later, she came back without it." "Why stay silent?" Caleb's voice began to break. "Because the missing payments went through my employee account." Maya stepped closer. "Did you create them?" "No." Lydia used my login. She said if I spoke, the police would think I was part of it. Lydia had not only stolen the money, she had built exits. Evan, Caleb, Nolan. Every person around her was another door she could close between herself and the crime. At 6 that evening, police brought Lydia back to the conference room. This time, there was no coffee. Evan sat at one end of the table with his attorney. Caleb sat at the other. Marcus and Maya remained near the wall. Detective Samuel Ward stood beside the door. He let me begin because Lydia disliked me more than she disliked him. Dislike makes people careless. I placed a photograph of Nolan on the table beside a still image from the elevator. The man in the elevator was Evan Price. Lydia looked at Evan. He lowered his eyes. "You killed Nolan at about 9:38. "No." "You went to his office because he had discovered the shell companies. He authorized the payments. At first. Then he realized the amounts had been changed and the companies were connected to you. That's a lie. He planned to remove you and recover the money." Lydia said nothing. "You argued." Nolan turned away. "You took the glass award from his shelf and struck him once behind the head." Detective Ward placed the metal base of the trophy on the table in an evidence bag. Nolan's blood was found beneath the base. Caleb saw you carry something heavy out of the office. Lydia looked toward Caleb. "You frightened him into silence because the payments had been processed through his account." Caleb finally raised his eyes. You told me they would blame me. They will, Lydia said. You signed them. You used his login, I said. The keystroke records show the payments were entered from your computer. Her eyes returned to me. You still had Nolan's body upstairs. You needed witnesses to believe he was alive after the estimated time of death. That makes no sense. It made sense to you. You called Evan and told him Nolan had escaped. You gave him the coat, scarf, and glasses. You prepared one sentence for him to use. You copied Marcus's credentials and programmed the elevator transfer. Marcus placed the security report on the table. The recovery code was generated while you had my phone. The lights failed. The express elevator aligned with the service car. Evan crawled through the transfer hatch and changed clothes. I placed the two elevator images side by side. People believed Nolan Price vanished between floors. I let the silence hold for a moment. But Nolan was never there. Lydia stared at the images. All Evan had to do was keep his face lowered and avoid conversation. Maya saw what you expected her to see. A familiar coat, familiar glasses, a familiar shape. Maya looked at the frozen figure. I spoke to him. You spoke to a sentence Lydia prepared. Lydia leaned back. You cannot prove I operated the elevators. The command came from your computer. Someone accessed it remotely, using a code you copied. That still doesn't prove murder. No. Detective Ward moved the evidence bag closer. The murder weapon does. I touched that award dozens of times. Perhaps. But Caleb saw you leave Nolan's office carrying it. He is protecting himself. He is. For the first time, Lydia smiled. There. Evan admits impersonating Nolan. Caleb admits involvement in the payments. Marcus lost control of his credentials. Maya was investigating the victim. She looked around the room. You have a room full of suspects. A room full of people you used. They all had motives. Yes. So why me? Because everyone else behaved like frightened people. I leaned forward. You behaved like someone cleaning a room. Her smile disappeared. Assumptions. Then there is Nolan's watch. Her eyes moved, barely, but everyone saw it. Police had recovered Nolan's smart watch from beneath the desk. The glass had cracked when he fell. The device recorded a sudden impact and then no further pulse. It also captured a 3-second audio fragment when Nolan's wrist struck the floor. Most of it was noise, but one word was clear. Detective Ward pressed play. A crash filled the room, a sharp breath, then Lydia's voice. Nolan? Her face changed. There was no dramatic confession, no tears. Some people spend so long controlling numbers that they begin to believe emotion is another column they can hide. She looked at Evan, then Caleb, then Maya. Finally, she looked at me. He was going to destroy everything. No, he was going to expose what you had already destroyed. He signed the transfers. Before you changed the amounts, he knew what kind of company we were running. So you killed him. Her restraint finally cracked. He would have blamed me for all of it. You stole the money. I kept that company alive while Nolan appeared in magazines. I fixed his mistakes. I covered his brother's debts. I built the reports that made him look brilliant. And you thought that made the money yours. I earned something. $4,800,000. Her answer came with bitter certainty. I earned more than that. Detective Ward stepped forward. Lydia did not resist when he placed her under arrest. As she reached the door, she stopped beside Evan. You were always the weak one. Evan lifted his eyes. And you needed me anyway. For once, Lydia had no answer. The police led her away. Caleb remained at the table. He would still face questions about the accounts he had allowed Lydia to use. Evan would face charges for fraud, obstruction, and helping create a false alibi. Marcus would probably keep his freedom. He would not keep his job. In Grayford, innocence was rarely clean. Sometimes it only meant your crime had a different name. Maya and I stood in the lobby later that night. The reporters were gone. Rain tapped softly against the glass doors. The express elevator had returned to service. People stepped in and out without looking at the walls. Maya watched the floor indicator descend. I was certain it was Nolan. You were certain of the coat. I knew him for 8 years. You knew what he usually looked like. That isn't always the same thing. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. 3 strangers stepped out. Maya looked into the empty cabin but did not move. Do you ever worry that you see what someone wants you to see? Every day. How do you avoid it? I stepped into the elevator. I don't. The doors began to close. Maya stopped them with her hand and entered beside me. I watched our reflections slide across the polished steel. I just looked twice. The elevator rose. People said Nolan Price had vanished between floors. He had not. He had vanished earlier, inside his own office, beneath the weight of a secret someone believed was worth killing for. The elevator trick was only a story, a coat, a scarf, a few seconds of darkness. Sometimes that is all it takes, not to make a man disappear, only to make everyone believe they saw him.